Hello, good evening, all. According to Indian Standard Time.
Yeah,
Uh,
Indigo Standard Type.
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Let me introduce myself. I am Ashish Kaushik. I am an entrepreneur in India. I run a tech-enabled real estate brokerage company in India. We have got decent traction, even in a recessionary market in real estate. So we have done well in the last 5 years and currently looking for more growth. So I welcome you all to this session on Make in India the road ahead. Recently, our PM talked about Atmanirbhar Bharat. So Atmanirbhar Bharat has, if India has to become self-reliant, it has to go hand in hand with Make in India. So we thought that Make in India is the right way we all should talk about what is the way ahead. There has been a lot of announcements like 20 lakh crore, 10% of GDP stimulus package, and advantageous tender processes and e-market linkages in the last few days. But still, after all this, we have a long way to go if we have to compete with major manufacturing nations like China, Japan, USA. So we will also discuss about that kind of quantum leap we can take in Make in India. So he talked about five pillars of self-reliance. First is economy, and he talked about infrastructure, systems. He talked about democracy, then demand, which we have to create we have to take quantum leap in all of these things. So this is the moment I think where there is a crisis in India, but we all can collaborate. We all Indians can collaborate, become an entrepreneurial nation, and turn it into a opportunity for India. As Gautam Buddha said, "Up Deepo Bhav, be your own light." So something like that, we all have to burn and be our own light. So I will hand over to Shanu sir. He will introduce all and start with the proceedings. Over to you, Shanu sir.
All right. Thank you, Ashish. Thank you so much. A small request, Abhi, while we are having this session, I would request everybody to stay muted because last time we tried this, there were a lot of echoes happening, so the recording didn't come out properly. Uh, and Ashish, being the moderator, so he'll unmute the concerned person and take the process forward. So, once again, good evening to all of you. It's actually my pleasure to be co-hosting in a way this session together with Ashish on Make in India, the road ahead, developing an Atmanirbhar Bharat post-COVID. Name sounds really big and flashy, but honestly, thank you all for taking the time out and participating in this discussion. Um, Before we start, let me quickly introduce the distinguished speakers on the panel today. Even though I've shared the names with most of you, I see quite a few people who have joined. They are not aware of who the speakers are. So, we'll just have a quick round of intro. And after that, the chat option is kept open for all who would like to raise questions, who are just participating. And I'm getting messages that quite a few of them will be joining in the next few minutes or so. Uh, so we'll take up the questions thereafter once things are done. Uh, First, we have Mr. Sunil Nanda. He's the managing director at JS Water Energy Life Company. It's a company which uses nanotech in agriculture and water remediation, which is pretty good. Something very interesting. And most of his clients are overseas. So he is a typical example of what we might say Make in India uh, project. Mr. Gangadharan, he already introduced himself, the Chief of Operations at L&T. Uh, but I still don't agree with him when he says I belong to the MSME segment. That's he's just trying to play it low. He's a wonderful person and a very senior professional in the industry, very well respected also. We have Mr. Manoj Digga, who is the Group CFO at McNally Bharat Engineering Limited, which is part of the Williamson Mager Group, and that's one of the leading engineering companies in India. We have Mr. Prakash Kamtam from London. He's an urban scholar. He is associated with various UN development programs, UNDP, especially focusing on smart cities and disaster relief and rehabilitation programs. Uh, so when I met him, he was associated with the government in Hyderabad. In his last stint, he was the joint secretary in Puducherry, Pondicherry. We have Mr. Pinaki Niyogi, he is the chief technology officer at Tractors India Limited. They are the leading providers of wide range of infrastructure equipment, especially mobile cranes and reach stackers. Mr. Sandhu, who has joined now, I couldn't see him before. He is the director at HMC Equipments Private Limited. They are engaged in designing and manufacturing of industrial dust suppression systems. He'll be the best person to actually elaborate on what this actually entails. Mr. Ritesh Vijoria is the CEO and director at OMC Premier, which is one of the leading diagnostic groups in Gurgaon. Sanjay Tiwari was supposed to join. I didn't see him there. He's a business coach focusing in the heavy industry segment. He's been based out of Gujarat, mostly working with Reliance and other groups, uh, mostly at the factory level uh, work that he specializes on, valves, pipelines, etc. Ashish is there, and I'm basically most of you know me, but for the others, mainly recognized as a business strategist, as an investment banker, and a social worker. I'm the CEO of Shriyai Group, and I'm on the boards of few companies, uh, including CPOS in Germany, TriStar in the US. Also on the board of OMC Premier, which Ritesh heads. So that's a brief. Um, to start with this, pretty interesting topic. I mean, we all know basically this year has presented grave and unprecedented challenges with the outbreak of COVID-19. And while most of the nations, quite a few of the nations, are working for a vaccine, economy has taken a very bad beating due to lockdowns and other strict measures laid down by the government. In my last session, I had mentioned about a trade-off between national health and national wealth. Initially, people focused more on national health, and that's how the lockdowns and others came in. But then governments realized that sacrificing national wealth or economy would be more disastrous. In fact, the world trade is expected to fall anywhere between 30 to 32% in 2020 due to the outbreak of this virus, which is very scary, actually. So the government has now started opening up the economy with travel restrictions being eased and industries asked to open up. But the question is it really that easy? And what will be the new normal, per se? In today's discussions, what the idea was to explore the on-the-ground implications of this balancing act, especially with respect to the manufacturing and infrastructure related industries. This may be India's fourth recession since independence, but definitely it's the worst. It seems we have to live with coronavirus, but under new guidelines. Some time ago, in fact, I was seeing a news article which stated that around 200 US companies were planning to move manufacturing base from China to India. We have this anti-China sentiments flying high globally now, but whether we could capitalize on that is a different thing, and that's what we need to check out. Like Apple was probably planning to ship nearly a fifth of its production capacity from China to India. There were certain US-based makers of medical electronic products like Teledyne and Amphenol, and medical equipment makers like Johnson and Johnson, who had also shown some interest in moving their manufacturing base to India. So far, India has projected a more resilient and diversified economy to fight the crisis, and it projected a major attractive destination for global players to rethink about their supply chain models and reworking alternative business continuity plans. So the potential for India is there, no doubt. If I may share some basic figures that most of you know about it, India is around 18% of the global population, world's sixth largest consumer market, and they have targeted, this particular government has targeted around $1.4 trillion investment in infrastructure over the next 5 years. It's a home to third largest startup ecosystem. Okay, so all these things are good. There have been some special window for manufacturing investments, which I believe is open till March 2023. There's an attractive corporate income tax rate of around 17% or so, which is among the lowest in the BRICS arena. And there are certain advanced pricing agreements with multinational companies, which give them assurance on tax structures. The government also has been propagating radical digitization to impel economic inclusiveness and social transformation under Industry 4.0. So these sound really nice, but the question is, are we really geared up for all these things or not? Uh, on one hand, we are opening up the shops and other establishments. The government wants us to maintain certain lockdown procedures, social distancing, and start production. In the past 2.5 months of lockdown, we have had one of the biggest mass migrations after partitions. The workers have left already. The businesses were not able to support their wages for 2-3 months even, which I find to be very surprising. I'm not blaming anybody, but factories are one part of it, service sector the other part, and from what I've seen in Noida, Greater Noida area, place where I stay, factories actually they said very clearly, we are not going to pay any money, whatever the government says, for no work, which is okay. They're okay in from their point of view. If you look at service sectors, some of the companies, they have billions of dollars, almost zero inventory, like Ola, Uber, Oyo, billions of dollars in their accounts, but they are firing thousands of people of the staff at the drop of a hat. So I really don't know whether how serious are we on the intent part of it. I mean, saying good things is different. Actually, acting on it is a separate thing altogether. On the other hand, this Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan economic package of 20 lakh crores, which is supposed to be around 10% of India's GDP, uh, when Prime Minister announced it, it definitely felt like it provided the much needed stimulus to revive the economy. Uh, I was reading somewhere, I think 3-4 days back, that as per certain experts, the calculations suggest that the actual government expenditure in the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan is just 1% of the GDP. The rest is all either part of the budget program or just an extension of what they were planning already. So, for example, if you look at the allocation to health-related supply, I had raised this health issue in the last discussion also. So I believe they had allocated around 4,000 crores under the head of promotion of herbal cultivation. Yeah. Now, if we add it to the 15,000 crore which was allocated for COVID-19 containment prior to the announcement, the overall allocation to the health sector in response to health emergency, which is around 19,000 crores, is actually 0.9% of the total 20 lakh crore. Now, if you look at it, this pandemic was the right opportunity to create superior, accessible primary, secondary, tertiary healthcare infrastructure facilities across India. My take was we should have mandatorily looked at anywhere between 2.5 to 3.5% allocation of the GDP for healthcare development during this crisis. Maybe not on a long run, but at least for the next 2 years. And this was the opportune moment. Somehow we missed on that. Now, one thing is for sure that this Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan is indirect and dependent on implementation by banks and other agencies. I've personally checked out with certain bankers. Uh, there's a lot of dependency factor built into it. Question is, what is the ground level impact? Just extended loans and credit lines? We actually need more liquidity in the hands of the general population to ensure economic transaction and growth. Now, if coming to this Make in India, if we look at the Make in India initiative launched by the Prime Minister in September 2014, it was targeted to transform India into a global design and manufacturing hub. As a central slogan and brand positioning, it did well while capitalizing the strength of India's young, educated population. There are quite a few success stories also, like Xiaomi is there, Lenovo is there, Vivo, Asus, Oppo. All have entered into India and changed the industry for good, which is fair. 100% FDI ensures that global companies investing in India can fully own their manufacturing units, and they will have all the rights regarding company operations. Now, during lockdown 4.0, Prime Minister gave a call to be vocal about local. Maybe it's time for us to move from a make in India concept to a made in India concept. Made in India concept will aim more at domestic factors of production, including investments in the manufacturing of products. We're not talking about assembling, like some of the smartphone manufacturers, they're just assembling some products and labeling it as made in India, which is not actually what we are looking at. We are looking at a complete end to end production. We should be looking at made in India for the Indian as well as the global market. But at the present moment, certain amount of localization and certain amount of protectionism is required to take things forward. Globalization is good, but the country comes first, and that is my take on it. I might be wrong, but let's. I would rather hear it from the other experts also to share their, when they share their views of what they feel about the industry and what are the major issues that they are facing, ground level issues. Thanks, Ashish. You could take it further.
Sir, Mr. Suchin Jain and Mr. Vivek Raman has also joined. Vivek
Oh,
Raman
good.
is my other co-founder of Regrop.com, and Suchin Jain is Suchin sir is into solar technology, and he runs a company called Innovia Consultancy in Noida.
Okay, great.
So, Shanu sir, kindly ask the esteemed speakers to start their sessions.
Well, who's next, Ashish? You take it forward. आप बताएं.
Just a moment, sir. I'll have to check your message. Just a moment.
I think we'll ask Mr. Gangadharan to share his views in
Yes,
the
sir.
meantime. Take care. So, could you unmute him, please? Hello?
Sir, I think Mr. Gangadharam is taking a while. So I think we can ask Mr. Manoj Digga to share his views.
Sure.
Thank you very much. I have some internet problem. West Bengal has this cyclone issue. So sometime it may be that you will find it difficulty and I may have to rejoin again. Santanuda has clearly told it is such a great country which having such a high level of population. And if the government decide to start making India plan, I'm sure the country will grow. That is my take. Because I am in the sector of infrastructure, and we have seen this thing to start happening. Like in the April, it was almost all everywhere it is closed. But May, everything has started, and the government company like SAIL, NTPC, they have also started their tender. And we have seen the tenders which they have given to the foreign companies, they have started retendering that. And they are putting a condition that the Indian company or the foreign company who has their Indian establishment, that only can take the tender. And more interestingly, they have started thinking of deciding a leverage of 20% higher to the Indian companies for getting the tender. So it's a great move, because if you see in the infrastructure sector, and which is going to be the key driver for going forward, because if the government has to make the again country boom or country recession, they have to take out from the recession. They have only one way where they can make the investment, and which they can start in a lesser time, is the infrastructure movement. If the infrastructure movement starts, definitely that will require the steel, that will require the cement, they will require the contractor, they will require the spares, and every sector will start growing. And that is the sector where in any recession, if you have seen, we have not seen this type of recession any time in past, but any type of recession when we see, and when the economy required to boom or recycle, then every time it's the government spending which has started coming into the infrastructure sector. And I'm very sure that going forward, you will find a lot of infrastructure spending. Government has already decided, and this time they have to be very fast in implementation. The lot of infrastructure spending is going to happen. There will be clear-cut instruction to the government, and their clear-cut visibility, it looks to me, that now the Indian companies will get the priority, or the government is insisting the other foreign companies to make their presence in India, which Santanu has told that make in India, so basically if they will come with the equity, they will come with the technology, and that is going to change around the company. I know it for the first 2-3 months further, around next 6 months, it will be very difficult and challenging task, because one side health and wealth, it's a good combination, Santanuda has told. Now we have started on wealth, and I don't know how prepared we are on the medical facility. If by having this wealth, if our numbers get started increasing, and we will face the real problem, that is where I'm still concerned. Otherwise, the people have started understanding that they have to live with the coronavirus. At least 1 year, everybody is prepared for. Everybody has started. Everybody started thinking on reopening the entire field. I'm finding that the infrastructure boom will be there, and that is where the infrastructure, that is from where the economy will start in first phase. Now we have to see how the banks and equity and funding will be there for the infrastructure sector, because infrastructure sector from last few years are in a very bad shape. So, and now all the infrastructure sector is required to be groom up for taking up all the infrastructure project which the government is announcing, which the government will implement, and the various companies where the foreign companies are doing. Now this Indian company has to replace that and has to do that. There we are expecting some guideline from the Reserve Bank of India on the restructuring, on the equity funding. Some are saying bad banks, some are saying various other things. That we are expecting. it was they also IBC they have suspended, which is also a good move, so that the government wants that other than the legal hassle of liquidation and resolution, let the company to come on stream, and they are giving the same guideline. They should give the same guideline to the banking sector also, to make these infrastructure companies operating, because if they do that and if the infrastructure spending will start, I think that will be the first move to turn around the economy.
Yeah, very rightly said, Manojji, that infrastructure is the initial point of from where our economy can start moving, definitely. And government is doing, I think, a lot to spur the activities in infrastructure. Tendering process is getting easier for Indian companies in infrastructure, and recent liquidity push from repo rate is also a good move.
I don't know this liquidity push is really getting any advantage, because the lenders are still not in the mood
Yes.
to lend, because they are still keeping the money with the government. So RBI, it's having no meaning. So
Yeah.
there should be some RBI guideline on the distribution of loan, on saving of the liquidity, on the restructuring, which will really turn around the country and which will really turn around the environment.
So thank you, Manojji. We'll move on to our next speaker.
Mr.
Gangadharan, are you able to?
Yeah. Good
Okay,
evening.
great. So let's hear you also.
Yeah. Good evening. Actually, I have taken a bio break because I came out of another meeting and joined you.
Thank you.
In fact, I would like to go very specifically into the industry issues. You rightly said the health infrastructure, which should have been improved. Taking this as an opportunity, I think we missed the bus. Okay, if you look at it as an Indian requirement, I made a small statistics about 5-6 months back. About 6 lakh crore investment is required in India if we have to have a 50-bed hospital in a small town of around 5,000 people population. And this opportunity should have been taken, and at least we could have covered some other villages or towns. We should have done it. And anyway, we cannot. It is an unplanned activity that came. Now, coming to as Mr. Manoj said, infrastructure is the key which has to move. That will be the rolling point. But Government of India and state government should impose that in order to MSMEs to revive their thing, there should be content introduced in every project that you should use certain percentage from the district as a input, so that the industry will get a revival automatically from business. See, like today, as a contractor or as a infrastructure specialist, we would like to look at it a cost optimization. But if you look at let's say 100 crore project, if you say 5 to 10% from the specific district in which that project is run, you impose as a condition for anything if that material is not available, then only they should go to the neighboring state or district. Let us say Government of India is going to spend 4 lakh crore in the infrastructure. 5% of it, that it is distributed to the MSME to buy from the small industries. There are so many products available. Only thing is, every time as an entrepreneur, or as a contractor, or as an investor, we would like to look for the lowest cost possible, and we will try to deploy. But this period, they should give an incentive to encourage people, so that the industry will get revival by its income rather than support. That is one point I would like to make. And another thing is, the MSME industry is suffering mainly because of lack of liquidity, which is known to everybody. The government has got a lot of things to do. I know for the fact in many of the MSMEs, the power subsidies are not being paid by the state government. I think we should use this forum that they should pay these subsidies which are piled up for years together. If this as a momentum, if we can take and ensure that governments are working on it, rather than putting banks to give money, lend money, lending money is one part of it, but whatever is due from them, there are tax returns which are not given to them. There are incentives which are not passed on to them. If they focus on that, automatically liquidity will come into place. You don't need to ask banks to do that. At least, in some of the cases, I know in the specific industries, we have a supplier who supplies, bearings. He has got a power subsidy of almost 7 to 8 crore pending. And every year he files it and he gets a, sorry sir, we'll take care of next year. If that guy who's running a business of maybe 10, 15 crore turnover, if he has got a power subsidy lined up, which has to come, the government should act on it. We understand government doesn't have any money, but at least help them with some infusion. We are not asking that you pay 100%. You give them 2 crore so that he has got cash in it and it will move. And similarly, the other points are, all these, today, most of the MSMEs are afraid because of GST. GST came into a place where they don't even understand. Most of the MSME people, they don't understand. They are driven by the, I don't want to antagonize any auditor or, chartered accountant on panel if you are there, but, they have been taken for task and they have been misguided and they follow that. And when they say that, sir, you file this, we will get it to you, and they blindly follow and get it done. But when it comes to return to them, it's not happening in real sense. So instead of, this is a suggestion that came from one of the small-time industrialists, why all the industries are more or less currently running in industrial estates or industrial zones. Why don't they put a GST check post and they just give a pass? And automatically the product that is going out will be known and his turnover is known, his tax liability is known. And what they are saying is if they want to do that, just a moment, I have to take this call. I'm in a webinar, I'll call you back, sir. Okay. Yeah, so what they are telling is if you want to improve, most of the industrialists are ready for it, but the tax rate at which you are collecting, that will definitely lead to proliferation. Okay, so they need to do a rationalization of tax incentive. And other thing is what is happening is the land banks are becoming very, very costly. The labor will be available where there are minimum facilities available. And the industrial land allocation has become very expensive and it is being looked like a real estate infrastructure investment by most of the big houses. They are purchasing this land, they are keeping it, and then after 5 years it doesn't do anything, then they will just make it a office space. It has happened in Chennai, everybody knows about it, but everybody will remain silent. Because of these things, the land prices are artificially increased. If for a investment of 2-3 crores, if he has to spend 70-80 lakhs as the land cost, nobody will come and invest. And government has to enforce all these aspects in a very, very meticulous manner. And in our opinion, if you want to take a challenge of, we can never beat China. Let us be clear. It is not possible. We will, if you are thinking that we will beat China, it is impossible because for them, the power is the cheapest resource available. It's a hydropower. We don't have any such power. Okay. Then we need to give incentives for people to make it as export oriented. You give them benefits on it. You encourage them. You don't get the money piled up for years together. These are some of the points. Then the other issue is that some of the sizable industries, they want to go for solar power. When they are going for solar power, they are fixing the price. Rather, you fix the price at a lower rate and collect the money. They are ready for it. And they are saying, you don't need any subsidy per power. You give me solar power. Right now, I can tell you a case of in South India, it comes at 47,000 rupees for a kilowatt ampere. This can be brought down to 25,000 rupees And if it is brought down, their operational cost will reduce. And they are saying, we don't need any subsidy. You give me that at this price, I'll pay you. And I will operate on my own. I don't need to borrow any money. Yeah, these are some of the points. I have written one PMO. I have written a strong letter saying that, sir, every district you start one project. Okay, every district, there are 576 districts in the country. Some of the districts you take a size, it could be around 100 crore to 500 crore. You give some project to the district and you encourage them to use the available natural, because people are not going to move back to where they came back or running away from that. It's going to happen. At least for the next 1 year, the people who have walked, who have rushed away from their workplace, they are not going to go back. So we need to create the projects in the area close to where the people are available, and we don't have any infrastructure that is sustainable for long term. We should focus on those projects. I was putting a ballpark number. Let us put 500 crore for each district and identify a project which is most usable for public. Let it be public health, school building, water supply, basic amenities. You focus on it and ensure that people are provided with a job and the quality infrastructure is created. If we do that, I think we will be creating demand on our own. That's all I would say.
Okay. Thanks, Madan. Quite few points you have mentioned, pretty interesting. So we'll sum it up at the end of this discussion. So can we have Mr. Pinaki Niyogi also? You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Shantanu. Good evening to all. See, Shantanu has already given me given some introduction about me. I am from Tractors India, TIL Limited. We are into manufacturing of material handling machines, primarily mobile cranes and restackers. We were all the time we have been into infrastructure segment. We have been the Caterpillar dealer. I used to head the operations in TIL for almost 10 years. Now I'm looking after the technology portion. Whatever Shantanu, in fact, I had a discussion with Shantanu also. Whatever I'll say today, it is basically my personal opinion. It has nothing to do with my professional background, or it is not a company's viewpoint about the subject which Shantanu has mentioned here. It's pretty interesting. The Prime Minister's announcement, Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India, when he was announcing the COVID package and all, he just linked it with self-reliant India. And if I just want to go back a little bit more in the history, and my perspective is little different than the business part of it or economy part of it. I just want to make you understand what is the background of these announcements. If you look back, many people are stating that it is somewhere connected with Swadeshi. If you see the history, the Swadeshi movement started in Bengal in the year 1905. In the year 1905, the British decided to divide Bengal, and then there was a revolt kind of thing, and then the Indian National Congress at that point of time decided to start this Swadeshi movement. Within a month of divide Bengal by Lord Curzon. And that point of time, it was basically aimed at getting the independence from the British, but it was a movement which is also aimed at the economy. And if you look back, what happens, because Shantanu has mentioned a couple of interesting things. One is, he said it has to be inclusive, whether it is innovative, whether it is going to have a deep impact. Now see what is the consequence of the Swadeshi movement, which started from Bengal in 1905. It actually resulted into independence. From 1905, when it was started in Bengal, in 1909, it gradually started spreading from Bengal to the other states. In 1909, it started from Andhra Pradesh. They had a kind of revolution which they called as the Vande Mataram program. It was also a form of Swadeshi movement. Eventually, in 1915, Mahatma Gandhi, he started the Satyagraha movement, which is also a kind of evolution from the Swadeshi. So it took 42 years from the start of the Swadeshi movement, finally, when India got its independence. And what was the essence of it? The essence is that you consume the Indian goods, because the market was already there because of the population. Relative population wise, India was always on the higher side. So the consumption was always there. So you start consuming what the country produces, and you don't consume anything which has got a link with the British. That means this Swadeshi movement was actually aimed at hitting your adversary. And the adversary at that point of time was the British. So that's how it started. And the interesting part was, there was a continuity. There was no change of policy. There was an evolution, but there was no disruption. So everybody, it started with Lal Bal Pal. We call this as a this Bipin Chandra Pal, and then Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and then Lala Lajpat Rai. These are the three pioneers of the Swadeshi movement, and of course Rishi Aurobindo Ghosh was also there, and then eventually it started with others, and then Mahatma Gandhi also took it forward. So this is what India started with Swadeshi in 1905. And then when the Prime Minister announced in September 2014 this Make in India, it is also in a very subtle way linked with that Swadeshi movement, but that had a much wider ramification. Of course, everybody stated the Make in India, but he actually didn't mean that it is only Make in India. He meant it that you make in India for the world. He meant in such a way that you make in India, you also trade within India, with India. That's why I remember in most likely in January 2015, when there was a Hanover trade fair, there was a huge propaganda made by Mr. Modi himself, because he went to Germany, and there was a huge propaganda on the Make in India, because the global investors were all coming in Hanover at that point of time. So what was the aim behind this Make in India program? It was actually meant towards you bring the global investors into the country, bring economic prosperity of the country, and of course create a job opportunity for the people. And there are 25 sectors, if I'm not wrong, there are 25 sectors of the entire industrial segment which were being covered in the Make in India program. I mean, it was being driven by CII, and I of course, I happen to be a part of the many CII programs, and also with my involvement in various programs, I know very well how inclusive is the program. There's a different team of people, whether it is in DHI, whether it is in DIPP, there are different team of people, they are fully involved in the Make in India program. And a lot of emphasis was given under this Make in India. We ourselves won a global tender, and even though we were not an L1, we were L2, but still we got a 50% of the order value just because we had a 50% local content, and there was a foreign bidder. So the foreign bidder was only allowed to get an order for 50% of the quantity. We took 50% of the order value by matching the L1 prices. I will say that there's a quantum jump in the Indian tendering policy. Earlier, we knew that even if there is a $1 billion tendering, and if you are L2 by 1 rupee, you are out. So that was the earlier days. Now with the Make in India initiative, what I mean to say, tremendous amount of focus is already there in the ministry. Lot of policy changes are taking place within the government to promote the Indian industries. So in the backdrop of all these actions are being taken, because all of you have been saying that, what government needs to do. What government needs to do, what you are saying, it's 100% correct, but that is nothing related with the Atmanirbhar Bharat program. That was actually, if you think that Narendra Modi would not have announced this, I think 12th of May he was announcing in this month. If you not have announced this also, what Mr. Gangadharan you have also mentioned, those benefits in any case the government needed to do as a part of the Make in India program, so as to promote the local industries. So now the question is, if you see in September 2014, if the government of India has announced with such a fanfare that we will now launch a Make in India program, then suddenly in 2020, even before 6 years of completion of the Make in India, why the Prime Minister had to announce another program which is called Atmanirbhar Bharat? It's very subtle. It is not that the Make in India program has failed. It is not that the ministries are not working. It is not that the industries are not getting any benefit out of the Make in India program. India is a massive country and it takes time to get the benefit percolated in all the levels. So everybody is working. In spite of that, when the Prime Minister has announced self-reliant or Atmanirbhar Bharat program, there must be some reason behind it. So it is, of course, as I said at the beginning, it's my personal opinion. So, of course, I'm involved in different meetings with the different ministries. I'm also very deeply involved in India's defense programs. So, of course, all these inputs are already there in my mind. But whatever I'm saying today is purely my personal capacities, and it should not be quoted that the senior, one of the senior most representatives from Tactics India has quoted this. So, it's my personal view is that the self-reliant or Atmanirbhar Bharat has a very, very subtle meaning into this. And it has got a link with the COVID-19. You know why? Don't think of the economy part of it. India can never be self-reliant as long as there is a dependency of the fossil fuels. As far as the natural resources are concerned, we are not so blessed like the many other countries. So we are heavily dependent on the import of the oil. Okay, and our balance of trade is basically arising out because of the import of oil, petroleum goods. So now, suddenly, no one can change the configuration of the Indian natural resources. So we will continue to be dependent on the import of oil, and we will have to be dependent on other countries. We will never be able to be self-reliant because we are closely knit with the global countries as well. So then why suddenly you feel that the Prime Minister is trying to insulate yourself that you have to be self-reliant? So the fact remains, because many things cannot be spoken so publicly, and he cannot say this so publicly. There are policymakers, the secretaries, everybody is working on this, and everybody knows what is taking place. Everybody knows what is the purpose of this coronavirus spread. What was the intent? What is going to be the consequence of this virus? How the balance of power will be shifted from one country to the other country post-corona crisis. Everybody is now seeing why suddenly there is a border dispute taking place between India and one of the neighboring countries in the LSE. Why suddenly? The LSE was already in place. Why suddenly there is a standoff? Why suddenly one country has started showing dominance in the South China Sea? Why there is suddenly they are creating a restriction in the air traffic movement over the China Sea? Why suddenly in the month of April, the Vietnamese boat carrying few fishermen who were just there to fish in the South China Sea, and they were captured? Why? So it all indicates towards a shift in the global situation as far as the power is concerned. And when he says self-reliant, it actually meant that you cannot depend on other countries when it is a question of your security. So, if you see all these 20 lakh crores package and all, defense was already there, a part of the Make in India program. But now going forward, we will see more and more. This is where the self-reliance comes from. more and more Indian defense will have to be dependent on the local manufacturers, because in the unlikely event of any war-like situation taking place with any country, if we are not self-reliant within ourselves, then we will not get the arms and ammunition, even the spare parts. If you see here, if I'm not wrong, General Bipin Rawat, somewhere around mid of April, made a statement that even if the local manufacturers in India, they are not meeting the GSQR requirement. I don't know whether you are all fully aware about the term called GSQR. It is called General Services Qualitative Requirements, which has to be made by the manufacturers when they are participating in any tender for defense services. So General Bipin Rawat very categorically has stated that even if the local manufacturers are not meeting the GSQR requirement, even if 70% of the GSQR requirements are being made by the local manufacturers, Indian services should be prepared to accept the local manufactured arms and ammunition. This is a paradigm shift in the I'll say the defense services acceptability criteria wise, because most of the cases the GSQRs are formed thinking that we will buy the global arms and ammunitions. And so I'm to say that we have to give time for the success of this kind of program, because for us, or for me, I don't see the Atmanirbhar Bharat is something which is big. This is actually a continuation of the Make in India program. The Make in India program has been already initiated in 2014. We have to give time. I mentioned at the beginning that it took 42 years for us to see the real effect of the Swadesi movement. So today, even if we don't give 42 years, at least we should give 20 years time. But the biggest problem today in India is the continuity of the policy making. If the government changes, in many cases we have seen there is a shift in the policies as well. So if the politicians show maturity, and if there is a continuity of the policies, then I'm sure this Make in India will see a success in the coming year. And Atmanirbhar Bharat, already you have seen there are a lot of contradictions, even because, as I mentioned, that it's the self-reliance is primarily aimed towards the defense services reliances, because if there is a war-like situation, we have to be fully dependent on ourselves. We have already seen there are contradictions. I think after Prime Minister announced this Atmanirbhar Bharat, General Bipin Rawat has stated that India is going to acquire now the LCA's Tejas, and they are not going to buy the foreign aircraft, fighter aircraft or multi-role aircraft kind of thing. And within 4 days, the Air Force Chief again contradicted General Bipin Rawat, stating very clearly, no, we will buy the 114 numbers of Tejas, but at the same time, we will also buy some Rafale and other multi-role aircraft from other countries. So this is where I'm trying to mention, if there is a focus, if there is an unison, if everybody is thinking in one direction. In case of Swadesi, everybody was thinking in one direction to make India independent. And that's how, whether it is Lal Bal Pal or Mahatma Gandhi or Aurobindo Ghosh, everybody's direction of thinking was actually in the one direction, and we saw a success. Similarly here, irrespective of the political belief, if the different political leaders are actually thinking of making India self-reliant through even Make in India program to make it a success, definitely we are going to see economic prosperity in the year to come. We will see employment, we will see economic prosperity, we will see a lot of growth in the country. So that is one point. A subtle point from Prime Minister was to make India self-sufficient as far as the defense services are concerned. The second, which is again very, very, I'd say, there may be a lot of contradiction into this, and it is a very sensitive word which I'm going to share now. When you say self-sufficient, as of today, we have seen the entire world is heavily dependent on China as far as the manufacturing is concerned. It started with America, and then to Europe and other countries. Almost all the products, global products, are manufactured in China. See the example of Apple, designed in California, manufactured in China. So this dependency on China for the advanced economics, which is already there, for India, it should not happen. So this is why what he is, in a very subtle way, wanted to convey to the people of the country that local, vocal for local, which is why he is again trying to mention that consume the products which is made locally, vocal for local, which is because Indian economy is a consumption-driven economy, unlike in China. China was a investment-driven economy, whereas for us it is a consumption-driven. So if we try to consume the products which is made in this country, automatically there will be prosperity of the country, and we will be self-reliant on ourselves. So this was my personal view. Of course, it should not be linked with any other comments or any other thing. If anybody has any comments, maybe during the question and answer session we can listen. So that's my personal view of this.
Great. Thank you so much.
Back to Ashish.
Yeah. And just question. Thank you. You have given a different perspective to quite a few things, and I'm happy actually. I was having a different opinion about how actually successful this Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan is, but you put it in you give a different picture to it, and I'm happy things are going in the right direction. Can we now have Prakash also to share his views? Prakash?
Hi everyone. Yeah. So thanks, Shantanu. It was a great opportunity to share some of my thoughts. And I'm not an industrialist, neither I come from industry background. So probably I would share a couple of my thoughts on policy and governance related issues. So I think maybe that would be helpful for the participants here. Yeah. So I think in terms of COVID-19, always I always used to work in the government also, and later part with the UN and a couple of other agencies. You're always trying to look at how to set right the priorities of the government. Basically, for example, if you take the case of India, probably universal healthcare should be the first priority. Then we should talk about the elementary and secondary education, universal elementary and secondary education. Then focus should be on agriculture, then infrastructure, then industry, and the last priority should be the welfare sector. Whereas most of the times our priorities, the government keeps spending more on the welfare, and in backwards, in the reverse direction, the priorities get changed. So that is something I think, because this endemic is a kind of eye-opener, I would say. And of course, COVID-19, we have to leave it for some more time. But at the same time, we should also be well prepared for any future kind of endemics, which could happen in any form or any time. So that is the reason why universal healthcare need to be the first priority and the most important priority of the government, wherein the basic healthcare right up to the village level is provided free of cost, and that is available all across the country. So that should be the first and foremost focus. So this is with regards to COVID-19. And coming to Make in India, I agree with Shantanu when he said it is not Make in India, it is Made in India. Because many times I think the term is a bit giving a wrong message, saying it is only for India and only producing only the local products and only for the Indian, catering to the Indian market. It is not the case. Actually, we should try to look at producing products of international standards, and the market should be the global market, right? So that is something what I always look at. It is, if it could be really made as Made in India, I think that would have been a much better term which suits the exact requirement or exact plan or vision of the government. Yeah. So again, I would try to touch upon three key areas. Probably I could share with the panel and the participants here. In my view, I think Make in India is not a single point agenda, and it has to be very comprehensive and holistic kind of policy, where all the stakeholders, including the central and state governments, should work together, and they need to really go hand in hand to make it a successful kind of initiative. At the same time, the focus of Make in India has been on increasing the GDP of the manufacturing sector, which has to be the first and foremost kind of the driving force. So taking these two as the key outcome indicators, what we should look at, I would try to look at few recommendations in terms of policy, in terms of business ecosystem, and in terms of customers. So in terms of policy, I think most of you are aware, like whenever we try to touch upon the industrial sector, most of the times the policy reforms happen at the secondary and tertiary levels. Whereas I feel that actually the bottom-up reforms is something which is very much needed for a country like India. These bottom-up reforms are nothing but reforming or bringing in changes right at the agriculture level, which is one of the primary kind of economic drive for the entire country. So once we touch upon these grassroots level reforms, then there is every chance that I would say like the agriculture is a sleeping giant which need to be really woken up, and it is already time we should. It has been like expected from various governments, but not really much is happening in that front. So the reforms have to come from the grassroots level. That is very key important aspect of any kind of other innovative solutions or innovative policies we are trying to add. We should really link up reforms at the grassroots level. That is very important. Otherwise, it will always be a top-down approach, which will miss the ground realities and the grassroots aspects, and we will always be talking about the top-level changes. So then that is one. And two is, I don't know, one other thing I always never understand is why we need to really set up the industrial hubs or industrial parks very close to a city or town kind of thing. Actually, India being a vast country, and we have lots of like vast tracts of land, and why can't we shift this to a kind of rural-based industrial estates? Because most of the time, what happens, the land cost, I think someone as Gangadharam has already mentioned, land cost is something which is more looked at as a real estate investment in the current industrial scenario in India. So I think why can't we have the industrial sectors set up closer to the rural setup, so that one is like you are getting land at cheap cost, and two is you are getting labor at cheap cost. And moreover, the labor migration to towns and again making the cities cluttered, and those kinds of things could be avoided and planned in a better way. So I think that is the second thing what I would like to suggest. Similarly, the PPP, public-private partnership model, is also something which need to be really rejigged, and it need to be re-looked into, because most of the times, I think in select sectors it has been working, but in many sectors PPP has not really done good. It has not really yielded good outcome. So I think the PPP concept has to be changed a little, and probably like government as owner of the land, and maybe the building and plug-in facility could be provided by government, and maybe the businesses could come and set up their operations and start. Even that could happen, like similar thing what is happening in the IT sector. Probably we could expect similar kind of methods in the manufacturing sector as well. So that would be another thing what probably could be looked at. And similarly, there should be focus. I think it's again a high time again if we really have to compete with the global giants like China and other countries. So the focus has to be more on the high and medium tech manufacturing compared to the low cost manufacturing, because most of the times we tend to work on the low cost manufacturing, which is really it has its own kinds of what you say, the narrowed or skewed kind of angles to it, by which way you tend to produce a low quality, and that will again yield low price, and further you'll not get many buyers. So in that way it will have multiple effects. So we should focus more on high and medium tech manufacturing or compared to low cost manufacturing. And similarly, I think our policies also need to drive from high saving. Currently, we are a high saving, even as compared to many other the leading countries in the world. So we are still a high saving country. So we need to really move away from the high saving society to a consumeristic welfare society, wherein people try to bring in more money into the market, where we will have good cash flow, and probably that will create a kind of good economic, probably it will lead to good economic results. So that is another thing in terms of policy to what we try to look at. And similarly, I think education is something very critical to whole of this entire, kinds of reforms or changes, or the global manufacturing hub, or you call it anything. So education becomes the key driver, and it's really high time we should India should really focus on quality education, especially at the tertiary levels, wherein a lot of R&D need to be done, and there need to be a lot of industry collaborations kind of stuff happening. And in terms of business ecosystem, I have a couple of recommendations. Probably one could be like, actually what happens is, many times whenever there's industry approvals and permissions are required, sometimes in some states I had seen like almost like some 30-40 department clearances are needed, and the industry owner need to really go from desk to desk to get all these clearances, and it takes quite a long time. Of course, there has been a lot of like a single window clearances systems have come in, but I was just wondering, can we have something like passport seva kendras, where the private partner comes in as the front end of the government, and we could have some business seva kendras or something like that, wherein the investor or industrialist who is interested to set up a facility, probably he could go through this facility and get the things done much easier and much simpler way and much faster way. So that could be another thing what probably could be looked at. Then again, in terms of availability of skilled manpower, yes, there need to be a lot of investments, both from the government side and private sector, in terms of developing pool of technically qualified and well-trained vocational education manpower on standards of almost like global standards, because that is where actually the quality of the manpower really decides the kind of technology you use, and ultimately the kind of automation and kind of quality you could bring in. So that would be another area what probably could be looked at. Then again, of course, in terms of, I think many others have already mentioned, the lower compliance, then competitive tax, then export incentives, then of course eco-friendly incentives, and supply chain optimization, and of course digital use of technology. So these are all the creation of a better business ecosystem. These are all the probably initiatives which could be required. Then again, in terms of customers, what I again mentioned in my opening sentence, like we need to really cater to the global market. So it is we need to really stop our plan or stop our thinking that we are just catering to the Indian customers, and we should try to look at the global market and global customers, where international quality standards need to be adhered to. And of course, there should be a lot of focus on value for money, where we could probably come out with innovative designs, new products, and in good quality, and definitely giving good value for money. So I think the customer focus, once it shifts from national to international, so most of the I think the input level or manufacturing level standards would definitely improve. So I think that would really make our image, the image of the country, and also I think that will ultimately lead to better exports and a good income for the industries. So I think these are a couple of points. And at the same time, I would like to just touch upon one other aspect. As I think most of you are aware, Make in India is currently focusing on 25 sectors, but that is actually two huge kind of sectors. So probably my suggestion would be maybe we should take things in a phased way, and probably we should focus 5 sectors in a year, or maybe 2 years. Every 2 years we should have some kind of priority sectors wherein the entire focus of the machinery is on those priority sectors, and there would be like FDIs or infrastructure related things, all that sorted in that particular specific sectors. So I think that should be the kind of approach is what I believe. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah, this is my suggestions. Yeah, Shantanu. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prakash, for sharing. Before I bring in the next panelist, just make a small request. I'm getting quite a few messages. We are slightly running behind schedule, so we'd like to keep it as crisp as possible. May I now call upon Ritesh, if you are there, because we did discuss about healthcare. So if you could just touch upon the healthcare side.
Good evening.
Yeah, we are not able to see you. We are not able to see you.
Now?
Ritesh, yeah, we are not able to see you, and your voice is not clear.
Okay. I think I have unmuted myself and also kept the cam live.
Ritesh, you need to move out from where you are at the moment, and then maybe we could reconnect. Is that okay? So, in the meantime, can we have Mr. Sandhu? He's looking at the screen very seriously. So I guess he has lots to say.
Nothing much, nothing much. Hello, everybody. My name is H.S. Sandhu. I'm from HMC Equipments. We design and manufacture industrial dust suppression systems. It's an environment product which is basically required in the core sector like coal, power, steel. I'm a registered vendor with L&T, NTPC, Tatas, and things like that. We're just talking about Make in India here. I don't know where I stand there, of course. I started my company about 20 years back, and it was fully imported at that time. Today I have everything made in India, but unfortunately, when there's a tender from the public sector, where I am one of the OEM sort of a supplier, it mentions it has to go to the original equipment manufacturer, which was from where I used to import that particular equipment. I make the same thing at half the price which is imported. But still, I don't know, I still don't get that benefit which Mr. Diga just mentioned and Mr. Pinaki mentioned also, that the tenders coming up now which give you a 20% margin on the price and things like that. It's still not working out in the, small MSME sectors. It's okay for big contracts above 100 crores and things like that. I think we still have to have the tendering procedure or the procurement procedure in our country is still way back. We still have, as Mr. Gangadhar mentioned, we have to be L1. That L1 policy, I'm an MSME, I make that product in India. It took me a lot of time, took me a lot of energy, a lot of engineering to do that. It has costed me a lot of money. And after doing that, I bring that cost much cheaper than the imported one. Still, I don't get that benefit for one simple reason. He says you may be an OEM, but this is Indian. We've asked for an imported thing. You know, this is where our tendering procedure or maybe a procurement procedure in the government or the public sector undertaking has to be more broader, has to be more wider. We still have the same old, stick to hit the bell. And if there's somebody who wants to change that particular rule, he finds it very difficult to bell the cat, because there could be a vigilance coming up, why he is sort of brought in an Indian product. These are certain things which I felt about the Make in India. Of course, I agree with Mr. Nyogi as well as with all the other speakers just now who mentioned that things have improved a lot in India, but I think still we have a lot to do. There's still a red tapeism. Mr. Diga mentioned about finances. Banks have the money they don't want to give because maybe the borrower is too small enough to borrow the money, or maybe he doesn't have the links to actually grab in that kind of funds to grow. Things have to be very clear, which I think will still take some time. But if this is one of the forums where we could talk about it, or which could put in some points somewhere to the government, I think it will be a nice thing to do. I don't think I have much to say. Rest everything, people have already mentioned a lot of things. These are the same points which I need to, I think, repeat will be of no use. My only point, as I mentioned, was that, Make in India is okay, very good. We are, in fact, for Make in India, we are today made in India. We are making this product in India, and hopefully we hope to get our first export order. So things are changing, but then within India, I think we still need a lot of things to change. And I think that's all I need to say right now. As of now, I think you can have others to speak. Maybe they'll have much more, because the rest of things already seem to be very clear with all the speakers who've just spoken now.
Okay, thank you so much. In fact, you reminded me of something my late dad used to say, and you're right. I'm like, I personally do not see much of the facilities percolating down to the grassroots. Big announcements, fair enough, but in terms of benefits, benefits are limited. I mean, this is a personal experience, something that I could say from that. What my dad used to say is, अगर पेट भरा हो तो आपको खाना मिलेगा, पेट खाली है तो खाना नहीं मिलेगा. So you talk about the credit guarantee schemes, and this is Mr. Rajiv Goa also, I think he's smiling there. He knows. So if you have a full stomach basically, and then you say, okay, I want more food, people will be more than ready. But if you are hungry, chances are you might not get the basic one morsel also. And when this mass migration happened, we have seen some pictures which were really heart-rending. And well, again, we'll come to that. So the question is, good schemes, good thought processes behind it, but how much it's getting percolated down to the ground level is definitely a question. I'll move on to Ritesh. Ritesh, have you moved to your location to somewhere where you're more audible, and I can see you now at least?
I think the mic was under mute by the admin of this chat, so I was not. Good evening, everyone. I'll not take much of a time. Good to hear you all, various diverse perspective. My background is I'm into healthcare industry since 2015, and prior to that, I have seen manufacturing and FMCG. And FMCG, which is more robust on distribution, low cost operation, a bit below 8%, to the pharma, which is pretty high. I'm neither pro or against this 20 lakh crore announcement. The fact is that my last 30 days of struggle with the finance, the companies, the industries, the market scenario, it goes back to what Dr. Shantanu has said. The bottom line is zero. It's not percolating down, and next 6 months it will never percolate down. For a very simple reason, it's not meant for the people. Few data points: 64% of the Indian population is employed directly, indirectly. Out of it, 34% of the population is employed wherein the organization is consistently paying PF, ESI, wages, and so on and so forth. Only 11% of the total employed population works with so-called unicorns and the corporates. So what happens to the balance? They work with uh, mid-tier companies, mid-segment startups, and you'll be surprised to know that the startups are the highest so-called employment generator for the people who are not that educated. You name the last 10 years, the big startups, the chunk of them has employed people who are not from IIM or ISP or non-IITians. What typically it talks about? It talks about the masses which needs employment comes from this 20-25% of the employment generator companies, and today there is no bailout for them. The healthcare industries today is close to $360+ billion in India. The hospitals are $180 billion. The pharma is around 50. Diagnostics put together 90 billion, and the rest goes to 60 billion, which is healthcare services, medical equipments, and your technology. The government is still not clear what exactly they want to do with the healthcare industry, though they said that 10% of the GDP they're going to put it back in a healthcare infrastructure, but are they mean infrastructure? Are they mean technology? Are they mean manufacturing? Are they meant for developing some small startups for that? Absolutely no clarity. My comparison with a small country like Israel versus us, you might say that it is not an apple to apple, but yes, are they shaped? Are they shaken with this? Probably not. So somewhere down the line, they would have worked on this. I'm not saying, let's not talk about Modi versus Congress. It's close to 70 years we are independent. So I could be the third generation which is working in my family. And my fourth generation, maybe 10 years down the line, is workable or employable. Have we come over the basic necessity? Coming to the brass tag of roti, kapda, and makan. The roti is going to get costlier because the farmers does not have a laborers, and it's not going to have that same kind of a production capability or a capacity even with technology. What means the throughput would be a costlier. What happens then? Makan you cannot afford because you don't have a money. Even with the builders are being exempted with RERA, and they are talking about a promise of boosting infrastructure. Do you think there would be a buyer for? Even if I want to sell my house, would there be a buyer and there would be a fair price? No. So there is no roti, there is no makan. Coming to the kapda, luxuries has finished for at least 6 months. What happens to the mixed segment when the guy is struggling for his basic upkeep for next 6 months? Do you think this sector would grow? My presumption, it's my personal opinion, it's not going to be. Pharma sector, which is around 50% controlled by the giant of global giants. Why in last 70 years we could not do anything to even change the proposition? I'll give you very interesting data. The top 10 multinationals of the world which works in India, right from Abbott, Merck, Novartis, GSK. In 2019, their profit gone up by 83%. And if you compare the Indian pharmaceutical industries, they are struggling. One more interesting fact, Make in India, Made in India, Swadeshi, Atmanirbhar. The government is pushing Ayush. They're talking about alternative medicine, which is close to 10 billion market. They're also trying to push through manufacturing locally in a healthcare. Where are the tenders? the companies which I named, which is the top 10 multinational, which close to have a 70% of the pie in $50 billion Indian pharmaceutical market, they depend only 7 to 8% of the total sale on Indian uh, government supplies. So what they are into? They are into hardcore open market. If government wants to start even a pharmaceutical, where they need to compete, is there any minimum assurance program for anybody who's going to develop a drug? What, in a bottom line, what I want to say that the promises are good, but executions, clarity, strategy, I don't see that happening. I have started getting calls. Maybe you guys will get 3 months down the line. Unsecured loan, which government has said MSME, unsecured, basis your credit history and all, you can get up to 1 CR. There are negotiators which are coming and saying up to 10 lakh at this percentage, not the bank interest. I'm talking about a middleman agent, and so on and so forth. My worst fear is the money which has been put onto the roll will not fetch the bottom. It will get absorbed by the top brass, and they'll become so powerful that they will do a consolidation, they'll kill the startups, they'll paralyze the innovation. We might sit again 1 year down the line and you will realize what I'm saying today. This everything which is rolled out is not for a common man or a small business entrepreneur. Medical tourism industry, which is $11 billion for them. The government do not even have a policy not to allow a student coming for education in India doing an interpreter job and making commissions. The hospitals are not regularized, and this is from 2015. This 5 years, this could not put on any restriction despite of the various representations at various forums to the various ministries. I think PM has rolled out this plan under panic to move the news. Fact is that we will see the execution is far remote than the promise has been made. I'm sorry if anybody who feels that I am probably going out of my shoes to say that, but probably I can see it's pinching high. And I'm in this industry, I'm in this market, and it's just not the healthcare industry. I'm into multiple setup and startups. Trust me, it's really there is no silver line at the end of the tunnel. And I submit my comments with this because I think we have overshooted the timelines, and I request Mr. Ghosh to take it forward from here. Thank you, everyone.
Very nice.
Thank you, Ritesh. Well, I'll come back to you. But what you have said is definitely.
Excuse me, I have to leave now because it will take 20 minutes for me to drive back. 7 o'clock is the curfew.
Oh, okay, sure. Thank you for being part of the discussion, and I'll catch up with you shortly.
I would like to hear from you what others have communicated, but it was very, very good.
Thank you. So we have Mr. Sunil Nanda waiting very patiently. So let's hear it from him as well. Sunilji, your views, please.
Shantanu, you talking to whom?
To you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. I didn't
Sorry
get it.
to keep you waiting.
No. No issue. Hi, guys. And it's been really good listening to you all. And Shantanu and Ashish coordinating this. Thanks to you guys. So we run enterprise small MSME on nanobiotechnology. And therefore, I'll discuss in brief things around my sector so as not to take too much time. Well, there's a lot of scope in nanotechnology. We right now in computing and in communications, a little bit in medicine, a little bit in medical equipment, but then there is this huge scope of going into For example, environment sector. You could be in wastewater, you could be in agriculture, you could be in aquaculture, and therefore this is a, a, a discipline which could really prove very beneficial to a country, employ employ a number of people, uh, and export uh, a lot of products coming out of this sector. Uh, so that links me to the exports. And, we export about 90% of our product, mostly to US, Canada, Australia, etc. Mm. And I find that we do not have a export ecosystem in place. I mean to say, today, we use FedEx to transport our goods. They've increased their the freight rates 2.5 times up. So pre-COVID, it was 300 rupees to 320 rupees per kg to US. Now it is 950 rupees. And I asked them, why do you increase this price? And the answer my relationship manager from FedEx gave me, so pilot salary has gone up in COVID times. I said, what about fuel? He had no answer. But the thing is that these people are, capitalizing on these times. And if we had our own carrier and our own export system, Exim Bank, and the government departments looking into exports, it's all really disjointed. And I would really welcome if there is a move in this direction. We talk about exports, but we don't talk about export ecosystem. And I think that's something that needs to be done. The second point I want to say is about our universities and higher education. Now, what happens in universities, we were doing a bioremediation of a drain discharging into Ganga near Roorkee. And IIT Roorkee was a monitoring agency. As monitoring agency, they're supposed to take our water sample and test it in IIT Roorkee. And I'll be, really ashamed to say that IIT Roorkee could not even run the basic tests, basic tests on water quality. So there is no audit, there's no capability audit of these universities that we have. For example, they're, professors, and I have some colleagues there, they're all busy writing papers. They're wanting to go abroad, they write papers. That's what our universities have become. They want to, there's very little industry interaction. They don't want to do things on ground. They want to sit in their offices and they want industry to come to them, and they pass off some third-rate technology to them, which doesn't work in the field, and that's about it. So our universities need to go through, can do a lot. I tell you, they can do a lot. And not so many engineering colleges coming up, including private colleges. We are really under-exploiting them. That's one of the recommendations I have. Well, as an entrepreneur, I don't rely on the government. I've learned that lesson that you have to be resilient, and you have to work on your own. Government does a lot of policy planning. They invest so much money in people, in just policy and planning. There's no execution. Very few of them will go to the ground and see really what's happening. If they go, they'll go once a month, come back to the air-conditioned offices, make some policy and plans. So Niti Aayog, everybody is like that. Only planning is going on. But there's no execution. I mean, execution in the sense, if there was this migrant crisis in China, do you think people would be on the streets running around like this? Why can't our local DMs and, people, manage these things? So guys, don't rely on the government. Work within yourselves. You will take time to grow. Let it be. fourth, I want to say that, you know, for products like ours, we have a very good export market. And I find that Jagdish Patel is here with us, probably listening. He's managing our Africa business. So I'm using resources like him, experienced with connections who've lived in Africa, to expand our footprint. I'm not getting any support from the government. Neither do I expect. So if you want to grow, grow slowly, do it within yourself. I know last 4 days, 5 days, we've been working on a solution for locusts. And we are happy to report that, you know, we've made some progress towards that. And we have a solution which can mitigate locust attack. But now, where do I take the solution? You know, whom do I go to? Which government will support me? I mean, as somebody said, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. You're left to yourself, right? So with some of these comments, I would love to take on any question and answers towards the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sunilji. We have few people out here, participants, Rajiv Goa, Sachin Jain, Abhishek, Neera. So if you guys have any questions, we'll be happy to take them on. Anybody? आशीष, you have question? अरे आपका तो हुआ ही नहीं अभी.
I would like to add something.
हाँ, so sorry about it. Please.
Yeah. So, Sunil sir talked about execution, and just before pre-COVID days, I read a book, Execution by Ramcharan. It's an excellent book, and where he talked about that the companies that has become great, and all the case studies he took from USA. Then those are the people who did not just talked, made policies, but they went to the ground and started executing. So he appealed to all the CEOs, VPs, and government guys to come down to the field and start executing with the people. So that's the only way of growing. And there have been a lot of views, and I would like to say that I am an entrepreneur for the last 7 years, and being an entrepreneur has a dharma of being optimistic, incorrigible optimistic till the time I am doing this. So this COVID times has come like a shock to all of us, and especially people in. I am a real estate professional, so it came as a shock, but somehow we made peace with it, and all teams are working from home, and we are not among those kind of startups which are giving lot of money to PM Care Fund, and on the other hand cutting the salaries of their own employees and firing them. So that is one thing where I think we are doing good. So there is a very good analogy that happened in the Great Depression time. In 1933, at the height of Great Depression, noted British economist John Maynard Keynes wrote an open letter to Franklin D. Roosevelt, who was the USA president then, to start spending on infrastructure. And later that came to be known as the New Deal, that letter and that policy, and in the longer run that became the silver bullet, how the countries could come from the Great Depression. So our PM Modi has also talked about the infrastructure. We all are talking about ecosystems are not there, but infrastructure is something that we all need. Infrastructure, skilled manpower, healthy manpower, and then digital is an ecosystem that all businesses need in India to thrive. So to make this Make in India successful, coming back to the theme of our event, to make this Make in India successful, I think we need very good skilled workforce. We can take the example from China, where a lot of skilled workforce are there. In India, we have got around 2,500 ITIs. ITIs are that institution that train the labor to be skilled. And in China, we have got somewhere around 45,000 ITIs, and population almost being the same. So that is a stark difference, that how they have been able to create a skilled workforce, and that is the result of it. Now they have got 28% of whole world's manufacturing in that country. So to achieve this, I think infrastructure is the main thing. From where all the initiative, all the growing of economy can again start. I think smart cities is a very important point here. Mr. Prakash talked about that. As a lot of migration is happening, people are coming to the mega cities, and almost 80% of our GDP growth is coming from there. So we need to create clusters where there are hyper growth of manufacturing, and still there is no dependency on the scarce resources of mega cities. So if we leave aside the reverse migration that has happened, really, we have been seeing a lot of migration from rural areas to urban areas. With this momentum, I think by 2050, we will have 843 million people who will live in urban areas. So we need to accommodate this massive urbanization. We need to find smarter ways to manage complexities, reduce expenses of people, increase efficiency, and improve the quality of life of this workforce. Because this workforce is the driving force of business. There have been a lot of surveys, and Indian Economy Survey in 2018 has already estimated that country will require 4.5 trillion of infrastructure investment by 2040. I think I'm not sure that on that measure how we are doing it, but we need to be very proactive on it. In terms of housing also, India requires 700 to 900 million square meters of residential and commercial space, which is almost equivalent to Chicago right now, to be built every year till 2030 at least, to accommodate at least 600 million people there. So with this context, there was Prime Minister's Digital India campaign started, and that has an ambitious plan of 100 smart cities across India. And all these smart cities are part of larger agenda of industrial corridors between India's big metropolitan cities. So I will sum it up what I've said, that infrastructure is definitely one of the most key ingredient of good ecosystem for business. And if we have to become Atmanirbhar in true sense, we have to change the living condition, we have to skill these people, plus we have to create infrastructure like housing, health, travel, and make enormous amount of change to become Atmanirbhar. So that is my focus on infrastructure.
Great. Thank you, Ashish. Sorry, I totally missed up. Okay. Anybody has any questions to put forward? Jagdish ji? We can't hear you. You'll have to unmute yourself. Can you? We are not able to hear you. Ashish, can you unmute Jagdish?
I cannot do so. He will have to do it himself.
Oh, okay.
Ashish cannot do that. Mr. Jagdish will have to do it himself.
Jagdish, you will have to unmute yourself
do it himself
if you want us to hear what you want to say. Okay. Anybody else?
Hello.
Yes, Jagdish ji.
Yes.
We can hear you now. You have any question for any of the panelists out here? Okay, okay. So, anybody else? Rajiv, you'll have to unmute yourself first. It is still muted.
The way we did last.
Okay, Ashish, will it be possible to unmute everybody?
No, sir. Unmute all. I can
Ashish
try.
cannot do it. Everybody has to do it himself.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Jagdishji, you'll have to speak
Yeah,
loudly.
He has done it, but I think his mic is there's a problem with the mic.
Okay. Okay.
let me be.
Hello.
Yes, Rajivji.
Yeah. Yeah. Good evening. Good evening to everyone. Dr. Shantu, thank you for giving me a chance to talk about. So, actually, I will talk from finance point of view, like what Prime Minister spoke about the financial package and Atmanirbhar India. So, subsequently, Honorable Finance Minister also spoke about economic package, which is running around to 20 lakh crore, and out of which around 3 lakh crore she spoke about for the MSME sector. Now, actually, if you see, we have in India around 64 million MSME units, out of which around 20% is in rural India. So the important thing is how this credit line, extra credit line, which is given by the government, is going to come down to the actually beneficiary. And what they are planned initially is about 4.5 million MSMEs for this 3 lakh crore credit line, which means it is not even 10% of the total MSMEs working in India as of now. And the problem, and even if it is 4.5 million MSMEs, but the point is that when the financial institutes and banks, when they will extend this, and that's also there is a condition like the people who are already having their outstanding dues as on February 2020, they will only be given extended credit, and that too also which are within the standard norm as per their banking norms. And that means which is the dues which are below 60 days from the date of outstanding. So there are a lot of conditions which are written, which of course you will not find, but you will find all those in your social media or any search machine. You will find package which is being offered by the government and which is given by the finance minister. But the problem is how this package is going to actually come down to the beneficiary, which is very important, because from the bank there will be around 4 to 5 layers of people, like from the bank top level to the bank manager who is actually going to do the assessment, and then you will also find in between some people who will come and try to work between the financial institute and the beneficiary. So you have let's say around 5 layers of people to travel so that the actual benefit or the extra credit which will come to the beneficiary. So it's a big it will be a difficult task how this benefit is of the credit going to come to the beneficiary. So my only point is that the more faster the government takes measure so that they implement this economic package, and the people who are the people, I mean the most affected people like MSMEs, the smaller people who don't have any other means to get fund, get the benefit and sustain this COVID time. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rajiv. In fact, something to just forward to what I had said earlier. There's some echo happening at my end. Okay. So, there is definitely I think one of the other speakers also did mention this. Uh, we have an issue with whatever schemes that the government has been putting across, because it's not percolating down to the grassroots. And especially, with this Atmanirbhar Bharat package of 20 lakh crores, what I have personally found is, uh, it's more of credit lines being opened up, more of loans to be given, uh, rather than having a mechanism wherein the money actually reaches the people it's intended to reach. So that is not happening. Uh, Number one. Number two, it's again going back to the same loop, wherein the bank process, and you're right, there's multiple level of intermediaries in between, uh, who practically make things difficult for MSME guys to avail the loan. So that's something that is a problem which we need to see. Overall, we have had two separate, or rather distinct, uh, thought processes. One has been, in a way, very, very pro government, very, very supportive of government initiatives, uh, which is probably there, maybe at the top level, maybe at the mid tier level. But from the others, what we have got is, it's not definitely there at the MSME level, or at the even lower levels, the grassroots level. So we have these conflicting stuffs, and what needs to be done is probably bridge the gap. Uh, we'll try to put these points, the learnings from this session, across to some of the relevant people whom we know in the government, uh, and see what best can be done. Just to wrap up quickly, we'll start with Manojji. Uh, he has certain concerns about how the fund can be released to the infra sector, uh, and there has to be certain or specific guidelines given to the banks, because what is being said above and what is being actually taken forward and what is being actually implemented, these are three distinct layers which do not connect. Something to, when we talk about what the Prime Minister said during his speech about the Atmanirbhar Bharat and the 20 lakh crore package and all that, it came in from a visionary standpoint. But over the next 5 days, what we heard from the finance minister, uh, the breakdown that happened. Well, there's maybe another topic to, but it leaves room for discussions. It leaves room for further debate on various areas that the finance minister has laid down. Uh, Gangadharan actually pointed out something very, very relevant, which, he says the subsidies which the government is supposed to give, it's not coming down. There are incentives which the government is supposed to give, it's not coming down. Same happens with GST. Since we have some 2, 3 people from Bengal, Mamata Banerjee has been also crying the same thing, that her government is not getting the dues that is owed to her state. So there is some gap somewhere, maybe some mix and match. I'm sure the center is doing whatever they feel is best for the country, and at times there are certain sacrifices need to be done. But yes, when some major pointers, major benefits are being announced, steps should be taken that it actually gets implemented, not get restricted to 2, 3 levels below only. Uh, of course, what Pinaki pointed out was very enlightening. What Pinaki pointed out was very enlightening. Sorry. So, Sachin, you need to mute yourself, please. This voice.
से थोड़ी आती है फोटो.
Sachin, you
मैं
need to
बता
mute
रहा हूँ,
yourself.
ठीक है क्या? नहीं, रेस्ट है. मैं मेडिटेशन करता हूँ, मेरे को कोई टेंशन नहीं है. जब आदमी मन का काम करता है तब टेंशन नहीं होती.
Ashish, can you
मैंने काम
mute
वही चूज करा है
Sachin?
जो मन का हो, और उसी तरह से कर रहा हूँ. इसलिए टेंशन का नाम नहीं है.
Hello. Yeah, thanks. Sachin, you'll have to keep yourself muted, please. Thank you.
Sorry for the faux pas.
Thank you. Thank you. So, what Pinagi put across is definitely very enlightening because many of us didn't knew how things work, uh, and it's also good to know that the government is taking serious note about uh, focusing more or giving leverage to Indian companies rather to international companies when it comes to tendering. But again, there is a gap somewhere. Maybe uh, is referring to the big tenders because we heard from Sanju also. It's not helping out the MSME guys. It's probably helping the big players. Uh, so that's something we need to look at in terms of weightage. I find this thing common with almost every MSME guy. They complain the same thing that they don't get the benefits, when it comes to tendering and all that. Few get, but on a majority scale, they don't. But yes, mid to large companies do get certain benefits. So it's maybe because of positioning, maybe because of certain value addition that they bring, maybe because of the confidence that they uh, inspire to the government. So we need to look at that. Now, what Prakash pointed out is something very interesting. Of course, he's the guy who can give more guidance on smart cities, something that Ashish pointed out. Uh, there has to be a balance between uh, number of people you need in the urban areas and the number of people you need in the rural areas. You can't have 800 million plus out of a billion, 1.2, 1.3 billion uh, people staying in the urban areas, because if that happens, agriculture will go for a toss. Any other activity that is rural centric will go for a toss. So we wouldn't know what to do. I mean, if only urbanization is the solution, then I think we are looking at it the wrong way. We need to reconsider that. India has been primarily an agricultural country, so we need to see how best to support both sides. And yes, there was a point about moving the manufacturing unit to rural areas. I think that's a good suggestion, and the government should actually come up with certain policies to project that. Uh, Ritesh, the points that you have raised are very, very valid. Especially the statistics that you have shared are actually scary, to say the least. And this analogy with roti kapra makan is something that's true. So, but you know what you mentioned about Ayush. Yes, you're right. I mean, we don't see much of tendering related to Ayush. Ironically, this concept of Ayush has caught up in foreign countries. I'm talking to somebody, and that person has a base in US, and he is interested to know more about Ayush and how to take this thing forward. Maybe have a joint venture with an entity in India that is working on Ayush model, and also buy the products for the American market. That's very interesting. But again, we feel bad because it's nothing much going out uh, within the country as far as Ayush is concerned, except whatever little push that the government is doing. And you're right. I mean, there has to be a more uh, consolidated and substantial push from the government's side to take things forward. Uh, Again, you mentioned about the credit guarantee scheme. Same thing what Rajiv also mentioned. Yes, this is something I've also personally faced. You talk about credit guarantee schemes, government is giving you support for taking loans for the MSME segment. It never comes through. You have to go round and round unless you have the right contacts within banks or you have the right push from the top. uh, Chances are very less that you'll get the support what the government is trying. So, the projections, the claims, what the government is putting across, again, comes to the same thing. It's not probably percolating down to the grassroots levels. This gap is what needs to be fulfilled because the majority, if you look at a triangle, the majority are not in the grassroots, but from grassroots to the midsection. You can't just focus on the top part of the pyramid only. So that this is something very, very critical. Sunilji, I was very surprised and I'm happy first thing that you have got a solution for this entire swarm of uh, specialized grasshoppers flying down from uh, Pakistan and other areas. Uh, so if you have a solution, maybe you should start with approaching the district magistrate first on a localized level, and you could write across to the Prime Minister's office and see what best can be done because they need a solution for this. They don't have any solution, and if you have something, it's high time that you start shouting about it, not just talking about it. Uh, how to do it? I mean, you would know better. Uh, I can only suggest. What you mentioned about IIT Roorkee is surprising, but yes, it's a fact. They are most of our, not only IIT Roorkee, most of our educational institutes in India are more theory oriented and very less of practical orientation is there. We need to probably relook at the educational model that is there in the country to ensure that we are more productive when it comes to that. Um, so I think that's about it. These are some of the pointers that have come up, very, very uh, important ones. Ashish did mention about looking at the best practices from China. See why China has been the manufacturing hub of the world. And if, as I mentioned, there are so many companies who want to shift out of China and they are looking at alternate uh, areas where they could probably start working. And India, if India offers something on the face of it, we should also be ready to deliver because a superficial positioning and on the ground positioning, there's a huge difference. Uh, I think Gangadharan also mentioned we cannot actually beat China when it comes to the precision that they do, the quality work that they do. But having said that, China also does very shabby work. We are all skeptic about Chinese goods because of a particular reason. So, but yes, when it comes to learning from others, it's always best to look at the best practices that they have and how we could probably inculcate that within our system, learn from it, develop on it, and let's see how to take things further based on these learnings. So, in fact, this session was supposed to be an hour long, and I think we have crossed almost 2 hours. Uh, didn't realize that, but I thank you so much for your participation and being patiently there, listening to the whole thing. And I'm sure there has been something, some takeaway for everybody. I mean, there has been a good learning for me as well. I'll see what best can be done to put all these learnings together and share it with some of the concerned people I know. And any support, any help on that part from any of the panelists would be more than welcome. it'll be of help not only individually, but as a country, as a nation as well. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time and for sharing your thoughts. Appreciate it, and I look forward to having you in future discussions as well.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.